Hey guys, I'm back in San Diego, my hometown. Today I'm going to be talking about just what Bali was like, my takeaways from that. Losing Saikhnaa, the person who came on board for marketing, and also some talk about interns that have been helping out and how that's going, and also a new developer who's joined the team, a woman in Austin, Texas. That was very unexpected, but came through our community. There's also a partnership that's in the works. I'm just going to kind of share some thoughts about that decision-making process and how that's going, because it's a little bit horizontal and vertical at the same time for GameTree. Also talk about some troubles with pre-seed and raising some more funding in the meantime. And that a lot has come from basically just not knowing the right angels or knowing who to talk to for a thing like this, and also just the kind of scale you need for a company like GameTree, especially when it's the kind of company that doesn't tend to monetize early. So that's difficult, but basically we're aiming for next year with the raise. The feedback that we're getting over and over again is to really focus. So that's also something I'm going to talk about, is sort of thought process around what's our strategy for focusing in the world where things are just going more and more towards hyper niches and then expanding from there, whereas my mind wants to see the big picture, the underlying everything interconnected. So trying to refine that and how that's going. Also just a little bit about a motorcycle accident that I was in, and lastly is just kind of how life is here and also a little bit of loneliness that I'm experiencing and also kind of mentality around that. So first up is Bali. Bali is a kind of magical place. There's a lot of gatherers, I've noticed. I taught a few personality psychology workshops. I've gotten to know a lot of people there, and I noticed that in average day society, people who are kind of more gatherers than organizers, it's about 50-50 in society. And in Bali, I noticed it's like 5 times as many gatherers, which is kind of funny. It's definitely a bubble for certain kinds of personalities of people. You get the sensory gatherers who are more into luxury and fun and lifestyle, and then you get the abstract gatherers who are super into a lot of the hippie stuff and ubud and ceremonies and spirituality. So that's really interesting to see how many of those kinds of people are there. Overall, Bali has a great cost of living. There are interesting people there, but I was surprised by how few actually what are to me interesting projects. For example, most people are doing coaching, or they're yoga teachers, and those things are cool, but I need to be around an environment of kind of peers, like-minded people who are solving similar problems, and I didn't find that many people solving innovative or rare problems in Bali. So for that reason, I don't think it's necessarily a great place for me to stay, and also people there on average don't work very hard. Even the ones who live there long term, on average I think are working probably 30 hours a week, 6 hours a day, or they'll work a little in the morning, hang out, then work a little bit more later. And at my stage I need to be working at least 40 hours, I think. Maybe even more is kind of the advice for entrepreneurs, is work yourself to death. But it's a marathon, and some weeks I will do more, but for the most part I think it's harder in Bali when you're not in that kind of a culture. Saikhnaa, so he basically had accepted a contract for the United Nations that he'd been working for a long time right before joining GameTree, and he's trying to balance the two, but it turned out that he just wasn't able to do it. And I am finding over and over and over and over again that people who aren't full-time on something get really way diminished results. The exception might be somebody who's a contractor getting paid strictly for the results, not on a time basis or kind of a general hourly. And the tasks are really abstract when you want somebody that's a core team member, such as a community manager. So that's unfortunate. It's a lot of time and money wasted again with him. On the flip side, though, we have interns. It's something that people I'd worked with in the past before GameTree, and that kind of worked out pretty well, but I didn't really consider it with GameTree because I was in Ukraine, and I figured interns might be harder to get from a distance or to manage. But in Bali, there's a program where I've worked with a few interns now, and they've worked out pretty well. So that's kind of nice. So if you're an entrepreneur and you need some help with certain kinds of things, interns could be a good option, especially coming from Ukraine, not having a lot of native English speakers there. Being able to have some people who even just speak English is a big help. And lastly there's a community member who asked if we wanted some help coding. And so I thought it was somebody volunteering. Usually, again, volunteering I don't find is that helpful. But I figured I'd meet her, and it turned out she actually wanted a job and was a novice developer. And generally I wouldn't hire people in America just because the prices are so high compared to overseas. But I figured, you know what, just so you know, the salaries wouldn't be as high as in the West, but we could go a little bit higher that year in America. It'd be nice having somebody in a closer time zone. And also, she just seemed friendly, and I liked that she came through our community. So Dana is the newest member of our team, and she's been working out really great, is a real contributor, and so it's also nice having somebody out on the same time zone that I can chat with. Getting a phone call. So yeah. So that's really cool. So happy to have Dana on the team, and she's bringing new energy and a lot of fresh ideas. There's a partnership with a company called Commune that's in the works. They basically are building an app for like kind of the super elite, is sort of like kind of the thing that seems like the people founding it are most interested in. But the thing they're pitching more to investors is a broader scale app for kind of social awareness type stuff. I don't know how much of it fully is like too good to be true or hot air and how much of it is legitimate, but the main person behind it does seem really, really well connected with a lot of kind of the world's elite celebrities, billionaires, things like that. Um, so he basically wants us to use GameTree to build the social network for them, so we'd be kind of a partner with them. Really important for him was owning the code base, because that's something that other people like wouldn't really do a lot of the services. So I agreed to that on the terms that they couldn't like sublease it or re-release it without our permission, and that we'll also do some sort of profit share if they create clone apps for other people as well. But otherwise, we're getting a little bit of ownership in our company, and we could also competitively bid to modify the code base, which we have an advantage for, which I'm wondering if is a good idea or not, because it's not really good to split focus, but also a company like ours that doesn't monetize early, this is actually going to yield us a little bit of profit combined with diversify our risk and get us ownership in another project. So it's looking positive, but we'll see how it goes. But like with most partnerships, a lot of them can be kind of shaky at this stage when there's early stuff, and with like a lot of the substance isn't as strong as with like a large scale company. Trouble with pre-seed. I am getting more and more feedback that we're doing too much, that we need to focus, and when I was just in San Francisco, I heard that a couple more times. So I've really been thinking about that a lot, and it's something that's been on my mind, and GameTree does do a lot of stuff, so we're looking more into the data, and it turns out that the news feature, at least, people aren't using that much, so that's something that's kind of nice to bury a little bit more. We're kind of deciding, should we be focusing on just like friend finding into a social app? We've been talking about adding dating, and that's something that could clean up the rest of the app because people complain about all the people looking for dating, and we can't fix it. People keep using the app that way. Maybe focusing on board games, because everything about GameTree is really good for tabletop gamers, like being able to know games that you'll like, find people, know that you'll like the people ahead of time, coordinate the game sessions. So it just seems like a really good niche, and it's small, but it's growing quickly, which is Startup Wisdom 101, but it's harder to scale, and it is a niche. Deciding if we should be like kind of a discovery app or a social network, should we be monetizing? So essentially the thing that we ended up coming to at the end of the day after a team meeting is that we'll run a few experiments, just do little MVPs on each one, and the idea is that instead of just trying to guess which one we think is the best option, we can actually just try them out in minimal ways just to see what gets the most traction, and that way we're not just kind of guessing. And when we start the seed round, which is now targeted for January of next year, it's the best time when investors come back from their vacations and have a lot of their funds that they need to spend, that we'll basically be able to say, hey, look, we've like tested it, the data here is looking good, and we should be able to be ready to rock with it, as well as testing a couple monetizations as well, and affiliate game links for the game recommendations, as well as some of the anonymous data sharing. Now that we have a bigger scale, it kind of makes more sense to do that, whereas last time we sort of analyzed these things, we've actually grown like 3 or 4 times since then. Lastly is being in San Diego. Oh, I guess the motorcycle accident. Driving down from San Francisco, I wiped out on the freeway. Luckily, I didn't get that hurt. I have a couple little like scratches and a bruised up foot. Slightly hurt shoulder, but it's been a week now, and I actually was on a walk today, which turned into a run, so I'm healing kind of quickly. Luckily, it was just kind of a slide, but I'm not going to be riding motorcycles for a while, maybe not again. So that's really good news for a lot of people who care about me. And also, there's a car here for me to drive back home in San Diego. My plan here is kind of just to be a monk and to just really focus on GameTree for these next 4 months until the round, beginning of next year. But at the same time, I've been leading this kind of like up and down exciting life and moving around a lot. So I've been getting kind of anxious of like, I don't know if it's boredom or loneliness or what, but I've been finding it a little bit harder to just kind of get in the groove and just really focus on the work like hardcore like I'd really like to. And it was really bugging me. And today while on the run, I kind of had a switch where instead of it being some sort of like sacrifice or some sort of like hard thing that I have to put up with, I'm going to try to view it more as like a challenge. Because there have been times in my life where I have been a bit more introverted. So I kind of see it as like a growth opportunity, or we like balance my personality more. But it is a little bit hard being in the city, even though this is my home. Most of my friends now are all living in other cities and other countries, and the people that I was friends with who are still here I'm not as close with anymore. So it's kind of an opportunity to save some money, see family again, but most importantly to kind of almost be able to be that monk thing. So I really should take advantage of the opportunity. Well, I guess there's a little plane flying by, so this is a good opportunity to say goodbye and see you next time.